What does all this innovation, all this breaking the mold mean for the actual organization? Do you break off like Google has Alphabet, Ninac, and different, they've made it very separate, entities of their organization. What's your thinking on that? Does it work best as a separate? Should it be integrated, or?
I think it's going to have to be integrated in the long run, but this is part of what Charles O'Reilly and Michael Tushman talk about in the ambidextrous organization. So ambidextrous organization, I think of it as there's the innovation engine and there's the execution machine. So particularly in organizations that have heavy manufacturing components like cars or diapers, or I've got this whole research and development capability over here, and they can crank out. A lot of companies will say, we have no problem with ideas, right? I can crank out ideas over here, crank. And then over here, the execution machine says, we can't make that. The machines that make diapers are massive, right? So we have all these rules about what we can and can't make, and what's happening is that those two sides are having to learn how to achieve the right level of flexibility in order to be able to churn out ideas. In the software industry, it's easier, right? Because they can turn out code and issue it very quickly, and so you find a much more agile kind of process, which is also part of why organizations are becoming more capable at faster innovation. But yes, the organizations are going to have to change as well in order to be responsive to the speed with which things are changing today.
And is that the same then for organizations that don't sit in Silicon Valley, that don't sit in technology, that they need to apply these lessons learned?
Yeah, in fact, arguably some of them are struggling even more to do that. We've picked on the car industry a lot, but think about insurance industry or healthcare industry, right? I've got an insurance organization, I've got the providers, I've got the patients, I've got all these players. If you've ever seen a map of healthcare, it's unbelievably complex. And so the ability to change that system is really low. It's very, very hard. Exactly. So how do we become more agile with some of these big systems? Transportation system. I mean, look what the so-called ride sharing, the ride selling, but Uber, Lyft. Look at all the discussions they're in about regulations. Look at all the discussions that they're in about how much they pay their workers. These are big systems level conversations that we need to start being able to have. And if I'm in an industry or a company that has run by a set of rigid rules in a complex network, it's really hard to change.
Right. I guess we get to my last question would be about change and what you might advise some of these companies that aren't used to that kind of disruptive change.
Yeah. I think it does work to have small groups in a company take something on. When I worked at Hewlett-Packard, I ran the change management team, and we spent a lot of time talking about this question. At the time, HP was organized into a bunch of different divisions, so we never tried to change the whole company at one time. We always started with, one division that was willing to come along for the ride, and we would kind of prove out what could work. And so I think that may still be the way to do these things. I think you're seeing a lot of change through acquisition, right? So maybe I acquire an organization that's already doing some of that stuff, like Google acquired Nest. It didn't just start making thermostats. So there's lots of ways of kind of reaching outside the bounds of the organization to either form partnerships with or acquire or play in different ways. I think that's why a lot of big sort of established US companies are setting up innovation labs in the Bay Area, which still have yet to be proven as successful as well. But they're at least reaching out and saying, how do I look at the dynamics of the world in a bigger way? they still are going to have to attach that back into the original organization, and the jury is out as to whether or not they can really do that. But
Sort of creating their own incubator within there.
some of them are incubators, some of them are just outreach. So Silicon Valley continues to sort of be a hotbed of technological innovation. So they're just reaching out to find out what's going on with the idea of feeding it back. Some of them are trying to connect to universities like Berkeley and sort of say what's going on there so that we can be on the cutting edge of understanding new technologies and that kind of thing, and then bring that back. Others of them are saying, like City Ventures in Palo Alto is also an incubator. They're saying, how do we actually do startup activities that will ultimately feed the organization, but we'll give them a little room to do that outside the reach of the bureaucracy or the sort of regulated environment of the bank.